Do you think Tennessee will expose Georgia or Georgia will expose Tennessee? There's a ton of interesting answers here, but the first one I'm going to go with, this one comes from Drew, who says, ain't no way Kirby's D is getting gassed downfield. Hendon Hooker will have to use his legs way more on Saturday. You think that's going to be the case?
Yeah, I do. I think he's going to have to run away from, some really great pass rushing. Now, that's also interesting in that Nolan Smith, who is the captain on that defense and the leader on that defense, is having surgery to repair a pectoral muscle. So they'll have to come up with yet another 5-star to play at that outside linebacker defensive end position. But quite frankly, this is the best defense that Tennessee is going to face all season. And it has been the game that I've circled on the calendar since Tennessee got past Alabama. Very, very interested to see how Hendon Hooker handles this defense, because it's going to be indicative of not just whether or not they can win the game, but whether or not Tennessee can win a national championship.
Yeah, I agree. And we saw what Georgia can do against a top-scoring offense in that season opener against Oregon. I think Oregon has the 5th highest scoring offense right now in the country, and Georgia made them look like a high school team. Now, granted, that was 2 months ago. It's a different Oregon team now, but it's something to keep in mind this weekend with Tennessee come to town. So let's get to our next one. This one comes from Joseph D., who says, I think Georgia will win, but not sure about exposing Tennessee. I just like Georgia at home. I think that's a fair point.
It is a fair point, and I phrased it as exposed just because I thought that it was much more a conversation about which one of these teams is good versus bad, as opposed to what the score is going to be. I believe the line started out at 8.5 or 9 points, which still for me is large, especially when you make Georgia the favorite there, as opposed to a Tennessee team that is perhaps the most popular team in all of college football right now. I don't think that expose in that context, in the way that Joseph is using it, is actually exposure. I think that, if anything, you put on your SF, what is it white folks wear? SPF 40? Tyler, is that what y'all put on? Because I don't wear sunglasses.
I'm more of an SPF like 15 to 30, but yeah, some people do use 40.
All to say, I like Georgia at home here too, but I'm also in the minority on this. I'm interested. Tyler, do you think that Georgia can beat Tennessee at home?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely can win. You and I have been to Athens. We were actually at the same game in 2019 when Georgia was hosting Notre Dame, and we saw just how crazy of an environment that could be. And I saw Kirby Smart tweet out a message to the fans basically saying, if you have a voice when you leave that game, you weren't loud enough. So I think it's going to be loud. There's rumors that there's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans. I think I saw something that a Tennessee donor purchased a bunch of tickets and is giving them to Tennessee fans. So I think Georgia could definitely win. But I think I'm going to pick Tennessee. We'll get more into that later. Let's go to our third response here, who's also picking Tennessee to win. This one comes from Don Ken, who says, not only will Tennessee win, Tennessee will expose Georgia. This is the first complete team that UGA has seen all year. Georgia has actually had some close contests against teams they should have easily blown out. Sometimes the Georgia offense doesn't show until the second half. Cannot be like that against Tennessee. Strong words coming from Don.
Well, I honestly disagree with they can't be like that against Tennessee. I think Georgia can do whatever Georgia wants to do, because as much as we want to talk nicely about the Tennessee Volunteers, who have 5 AP ranked wins and could very well be one of the best teams in college football, I also just want to underscore here that Georgia is giving up 10.5 points per game, and Georgia's scoring 41 points a game. And I'm the first person to point out that giving up 22 to Kent State and going down 10 to Missouri is not a good look. I'll also just throw in here this whole SEC adage about the games that matter to those programs and the games that don't. So Trevor Knight beats Nick Saban in Alabama with Josh Heupel as offensive coordinator in 2013. And all I could hear from Bama fans is that we didn't care about that game because it's not for the national championship, which sounded like sour grapes, right? And then you get to 2018, where I feel as if Oklahoma has a mental edge over Alabama, having beaten them 5 years before. And Bama fans are very quick to say, no, this one is for the play-in to the national championship game. You're not going to be within the ballpark of Alabama. And guess what? Quinnen Williams chased Kyler Murray into dirty and bloody. Like, Murray went for 300 and 100, but it was the hardest fought 300 and 100 I've ever seen a quarterback take. And it felt like that defensive line just had their way with the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, which is another way of saying that I believe that Georgia is going to rise to this challenge. I don't see Georgia getting exposed here, man. I mean, they're wearing red. That's about as much sun exposure as I think they're about to get, especially as, Tyler, talk about the 2019 game, Notre Dame. That game was at night, and it was like the first time in like, I want to say 6 years or maybe ever that the window for the night game had been used in the SEC for Georgia in some time. And this feels like a game that has that sort of significance. Add to that just one more fact. The last time that we had number 1 versus number 2 in the AP play against each other in the SEC, the winner of that game won the national championship. And it happened again in 2011. So this game very much could produce the national champion this season. What do you think about that?
Oh, it definitely could. I honestly think that it's going to be a really close game. I do think Tennessee is going to pull it out, and I think we're going to walk away from this one going, yep, those are two of the best 4 teams in the country. Offensively, defensively, I think both teams are loaded, and it's going to be an awesome, awesome football game. I cannot wait to see the atmosphere. When we were there, they did the light show. Do you remember that? That was one of the coolest things I've ever seen at a college football stadium, and I think it's going to be similar this weekend. Now, there's been a lot of talk about Tennessee's defense, and I understand, but I think it's a little overblown. Right now, Tennessee is the 26th ranked scoring defense in college football. Now, we saw Alabama just basically have their way, but that's Alabama. It's Bryce Young. It's Jahmyr Gibbs. So I don't hold that against them as much. Now, if we're looking at the stats, Georgia does appear to be more balanced, but we'll see. Stetson Bennett hasn't really been in a shootout since ever, maybe. So we'll see this weekend.
Alabama, Georgia SEC championship game, and they lost that game.
Yeah, they did. And then in the national championship, I wouldn't consider that a shootout. And Georgia's defense, they rose to the occasion there after getting, I don't want to say embarrassed in that SEC championship, but it's certainly a wake-up call. And I think this game is going to be awesome. But I do like the Vols.
Yeah, man, I'm just not going to bet against Kirby Smart in that defense. The thing that I've come to learn about college football, especially having been an Oklahoma Sooner fan, from my life, is that offense doesn't win you championships. Offense doesn't beat better teams. Defense does. And to the point about maybe we're overblowing Tennessee's defensive woes, I do this math every year. If you don't have a top 20 defense, it's really hard to win a national championship. If you don't have a top 10 defense and your offense stutters, it's really hard to beat really good teams. And I think that Georgia just has more margin for error, whereas I believe Tennessee's going to have to score on every possession that they have. And I'm even talking about 1 or 2 3-and-outs is enough to give Stetson Bennett, Kenny McIntosh, Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington enough of an edge to let your defense actually pin back their ears and go after Hendon Hooker. Either way, I'm with you. I'm excited about this game because I really do want to see who's good and what that means going forward for what we're going to know about the college football playoff. Thank you for watching the #1 college football show. Please remember to subscribe to the channel and like this video so that you don't miss any of the best college football coverage in America.